Okay. All right. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Right.
All right. So let me, I can just share my screen, honestly. Whew. There we go. Okay. So here's the group discussion. Let's see. At the end of your meeting, take time, offer prayer. Oh, did anybody have like a spiritual thought? I guess Dale just kind of did one.
Well, I had one thought to share. Really, I was listening to a conference. I have a commute to work, and so I've been listening to this last general conference, and I just was listening to the talk. I'm trying to remember who gave it, but anyway, it was in the priesthood session, and it was about back in like the way like in the 1800s, I think it was. The farmer, he was like a sugar beet farmer in Lehi, Utah, and they had like an early frost that year. And anyway, the week they were supposed to harvest the sugar beets, several members of his family got influenza and died, and so he had to transport their bodies up to Ogden or whatever. And as he was coming home, he just saw all these wagon loads of sugar beets going the way to the factory as he was coming home, and everybody would pass him and say, hey, George. And he's thinking, I wish those were my sugar beets because they weren't going to get harvested because of all the tragedy. And then when he got home and saw his field, he realized that all those sugar beets that had been taken to the factory were from all of his friends and neighbors in the ward. And just basically how we are that's such a huge blessing of the gospel and of the priesthood, is that we're here to lift one another's burdens and to look out for each other. And that just really touched me. And it was a good reminder that that's one of the biggest keys of the gospel, is that we love and lift one another's burdens. And so I say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Richard. That's awesome.
Amen. Amen.
Okay. And can you guys see, does it have the discussion topics on my screen?
I don't see them.
Let's see about that.
I don't see anything.
No, I don't see anything either. Everything's just black on my screen.
Okay. Well,
it was shown earlier, Andrew. I don't know what happened.
Oh, there it is.
Okay. Okay. Let's try that. So it's working now then?
I don't see anything. Oh, yes. Now I see it. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, you can just click on my face, my window, and it'll stay up. Whether so we can start from the top. Vita Healthcare case. I struggled reading through that one personally. Healthcare, all the topics kind of tend to go over my head. As we begin discussing the following questions. Vote, is RX a success at the time of the case? So why don't we go Sally, Dalen, Kelly, and Richard. And let's take a vote.
Why me first? Just kidding.
Because you're the first in line on my screen.
So I was like, what's freezing up? Okay. Sorry, let me see. Did you ask a question? Sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
So we're just going to vote on if RX is a success at the time of the case.
This is, yeah, I think so.
Okay.
We're just voting, right? Or do you want the reasoning behind that?
That's the next question.
Sorry, you cut out. What did you say?
If you could give your reasons, that'd be great.
Okay. Let me open my document. Well, from what I remember, they were actually... So, like, they struggled a lot at the beginning, but then eventually they were able to come out of their negative numbers. And I think it took them... I think it was until, like, 2003 that they started to make money, but I think like the main reason why was because they were focusing more like on the day-to-day how do I say this? Like, I guess operations of the place instead of focusing more like on the long term. Like, I guess like they looked at what they could do each day to improve, and I feel like that's really what really helped them to become successful. And they were more focused on trying to help patients instead of the business, instead of looking at it as a way to make more money from it. And I think that really helped. So yeah, I don't know. That's what I remember. I kind of read this really fast.
That's awesome. Okay. David.
Okay. I say that they weren't. I say no.
Whatever.
And my reasoning as to why. Do you want me to go now? Or you want me to go? You want to hear why everyone thinks they were first?
Now, why don't we go who thought it was a success? They can talk first and come back to the island. So, Kelly, what do you think Eric's success at the time of the case?
I'm trying to find out where or what time period this case study was done.
2013.
Yeah. Like, case.
Well, I mean, I guess the real question is to define what success is. The reason I bring that up is because like Exhibit 6, you got RX's service and financial projections. So their projections are looking really good. Let me get down to Exhibit 10. It talks about their enrollment, teammates, and consolidated net revenues. So, I mean, at the time of 2013, they were, because they ended off with the revenue in the millions of dollars, $480 million. So, I mean, they're in the plus, they're in the positive, maybe not exactly where they want to be, but they're definitely in an upward trend. So, according to what Exhibit 10 is financially, I don't know if I could consider them a success with how large of a volume they have, but it seems like they're getting there. They're going in the right direction. So I think they're on the way to be successful.
Okay. Cool. What do you think?
Okay. And I don't know if everybody's having a hard time hearing you, but your mic is really muddled. Like I have a real hard time understanding you because it sounds like it's really cutting in and out on your microphone. So I don't know if that's just me, but anyway.
Sorry about that.
Oh no, it just sounds like it might be like an internet connection or something.
Yeah, it sounds kind of echoed.
Okay. So I guess I would look at it when I read the case discussion. I thought, I was intrigued by how, they were really focused on growing, and they were really they were focused on growing the volume, but they had some serious operational issues, and their customer satisfaction ratings were horrible. And so that's when whoever he was, Theory, told him that to stop focusing on growth and start just focusing on getting their customer satisfaction up, and reminded them kind of the whole mission of the company, and that they were to really take good care of customers and provide quality service for them. So I look at, when they took that step, and then you look at the numbers about how they were able to, by 2007, they topped 99% of filling their prescriptions on time. And then they started to see that organic growth with the numbers and the revenue and things like that. So I would say that they are a success at the time of this case study. I mean, they obviously have other goals that they set for the business that they hadn't reached yet, but I feel like they are on a good pathway to success.
Okay. Good, and those are some good reasons. I also agree. I think that RX is a success at the time of the case. I think they, definitely struggled at first, and then Theory came in and kind of put them into shape, told them to focus on their operational issues and address those and really lock those down. And that really later led to, they're growing. It said they went from like 105 million to like 140 million or 480 million or something like that. Yeah, 105 million to 480 million in just I think less than a year. No, 4 years. Sorry. So yeah, I think at the time of the case, they by the end of it at least, they did become pretty successful. So Dalen, can you give us the reasons why you don't see RX as a success?
I changed my mind. I was originally, no, they weren't successful. But you guys just gave such good arguments. You persuaded me otherwise. No, but I'm being serious. Reason why I was originally no was they created like a deliberate strategy plan type of thing where they were like, we're going to do this. These are our projections. This is what we're going to think. And it was totally untested. It was all based off assumptions. Were they successful by the time of the case? I think close. I mean, and the reason I'm going to change my reason, like, yeah, they're successful now, is because they learned from their mistakes. But their original model, and when 30 came in, even after a little bit, was totally off because they didn't test anything. They had all these assumptions about revenues and profits. They were way off. They went way into the hole and were really struggling. But if they've learned from that and they learned, we can't just create a strategy and just expect it to happen. We need like an emergent kind of strategy to go into place. So that way, when we start, that, something can bubble up and be like, we need to make some adjustments to our numbers here. We need to make some adjustments to this. We need to make adjustments to that. And if they're doing that and they learn their mistake, then I'd say they're successful. Because, I mean, if you learn from it and you guys brought up a lot of good points of the success they've had. So I think going forward, I think they're going to be more successful. So I changed my answer. I couldn't actually. At first, I was going to try to fight y'all and be like, this is why they stunk, but just couldn't do it. You guys had some good evidence. I'm serious.
Okay, no worries. All right, well then that's good. We're all kind of in agreement there. Do you think either Richard or Dalen or Sally, one of you guys could read this paragraph? It's on page 5, paragraph 5. I know my mic's kind of.
Yeah, long. I can.
Where's it? Page 5.
You want me to go ahead and do it?
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks.
The two were therefore surprised by Theory's directive. Kent told us to stop growing and gave us 6 to 12 months to fix RX's service experience, Gollum recalled. RX was projected to lose between $10 million and $12 million in 2007, and a 6-month halt on growth would see this figure balloon to roughly $18 million in losses for the year. Theory expanded on his reasoning. The RX team was not being sensitive to their impact on the clinics. The effect on the core dialysis business bothered me, and that they'd emphasize growth over quality. We couldn't do this, given our long-term time frame for RX. It had to aspire to be a world-class company rather than one that we could liquidate quickly. I made them stop growing until the day-to-day quality of the experience was better. Most of DaVita's top leaders wanted to shut RX down and were reluctant to support this effort. When I told DaVita's executive team and board that RX's losses were going to be much higher than projected because the service was so bad that we were stopping growth, that made the pressure to shut it down even worse, Theory recalled. External pressures were also rising. The critics had questioned why DaVita just didn't just continue to grow its successful dialysis business, Fiali said.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that. Okay, so why did Thury start DaVita in the first place, and how did they get out of sync? What do you guys think? Anybody can kind of chime in there.
I'm looking for where it actually says it.
We'll need a minute to think about this.
So if you look at on page 3, it just says what they're talking about DaVita RX, but it said, our vision was twofold back then: to build the greatest dialysis company the world had ever seen and to transform kidney care in America. And and then they were kind of trying to bring that over into RX. But you look at, they were so big on like the culture, like not just for the patient, but like for the everybody that worked at the rig, on creating a culture about extreme customer service, and they were there to take care of each other. And so they saw that as the biggest reason that they were there, was to take care of people and to provide a good experience.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the get out of sync side of it, where every time, regardless if it was DaVita or the RX, it's whenever they made, especially as DaVita, whenever they made an acquisition, it always doubled their numbers every time. I look at, doubling that kind of operations to begin with, even if you're really smooth at it, but you just doubled all the workload. You don't know, with these acquisitions, what these other employees are like that you're bringing on, these other facilities, the other doctors. You don't know about their economic situation from where they're currently geographically located. You're not going to be familiar with those things. And so that's going to be harder to bring on than just immediately, implementing DaVita's system and get everybody on board. It takes adjustment. Right now at work, just a smaller scale of it is, we're really shorthanded at where I'm at right now. I'm still working probably 80 plus hours a week, trying to cover multiple shifts and multiple responsibilities. And, some of the quality does suffer. I take a lot of pride in my work, but I'm also only one man. I can only get so much done. And so some of that quality does suffer, and that goes for everybody at work. So we're getting ready to hire up. We got several new hires coming on, but now we've also got to keep that quality up while training them to also match that quality, but to bring them up to the level instead of just assuming they can just do it right away. So I think that's kind of how they got out of sync, is just the acquisitions were just so large, and they were like every year, and I think that just didn't help with them to stay in sync.
And I think that one of the reasons why they also started in the first place was because if you look at there's an exhibit 6, and they saw like there was financial opportunity, because in 2004 they hit $1.8 billion, and that was expected to increase to $3.5 billion in 2010. So obviously they saw an opportunity to grow financially. The only thing that they needed to work, like the thing that I guess they failed to like look at the beginning, was just like the operations of it, because they didn't really expect to be super slow out filling out prescriptions for patients and time like that. So, like, that's what went wrong, and that's why they didn't make as much money when they expected it to. But like, I mean, I guess that's one of the reasons why like they also started at the beginning, I think.
I definitely agree. So what lessons can we learn that applies to Paladina? So I can kind of take that question. Something that I thought that applies to Paladina is that they also need to really lock down the quality of the concept and the product and what they're supplying. That's what we kind of said, that RX kind of fell out of sync there about the main focus of the big idea of the company. I think Paladina is a little bit scatterbrained on trying to figure out who they are and what they want to do. And so I think that's a lesson that can be applied towards Paladina as well, is just really locking down their processes, proving the business model that they already have, working with smaller companies before they try and scale. That's something that I think that they should do, as well as something unique to RX that Paladina shouldn't do is lean too much on DaVita. Paladina has the feel of kind of like a startup, and even less so than RX, and they kind of wanted it to keep it that way. And so I think not focusing on too much on what RX did and kind of figuring out their own path, what works for them, is some lessons that can be learned for Paladina. Okay. Can someone an explanation kind of on how Paladin is doing what it's doing? Or did you have something else, Dalen?
I had something else.
That's totally fine.
Okay, I'm just gonna back up what you said. One of the things they can learn on like page 4 of the case, you see that RX had a close relationship with DaVita, but they created their own business unit and they operated independently. It says on the top of page 5. Because however they venture operated independently, we were entrepreneurial, flat, nimble, and resourceful. If DaVita had wrapped big company process around this new initiative, it would have died. And I think that's a true statement. And I think that's something that that was a good move with the RX, and I think that's the same move they need to make now with Paladina. And you touched on the reason why, but yeah, we got difference in culture, difference in priorities, right? And we have some different processes that need to happen. And when a company that's a big company tries to create a new process, new priorities, and new culture within itself for a new type of model, it will always fail. It's because current culture and priorities and processes will kill the new model every single time. It will kill it. The new entrepreneurial model has to have its own cost structure and its own revenue stream and its own type of culture to survive. And it can still be owned by the same company, but it needs to operate independently. If you guys are an example of this recently, an example is Netflix and Blockbuster. When we were young, well, maybe all of us. I don't know how old Sally is. She seems pretty young. So maybe Sally doesn't remember Blockbuster. I'm just kidding.
No, I remember.
Okay, awesome. So Blockbuster in the 90s was huge. They brought in billions in revenue a year.
Mm-hmm.
Netflix has been around since free. It didn't have any brand name. Blockbuster in like 2000 had 100% brand awareness in the United States. And 70% of Americans lived within a 10-minute drive to a Blockbuster. They had over 5,000 stores, and they did billions in revenue. Netflix wasn't even doing millions by 2010. But we know Blockbuster declared bankruptcy, went out of business. And it's like, well, Netflix had like a better model. You could stream movies, you could rent DVDs, they shipped it to your house, you stripped back, you had no late fees. Or Blockbuster, you had late fees. But Blockbuster saw them as a threat eventually and incorporated all the things Netflix does. Blockbuster streamed movies, new releases, they did the DVD shipping, and they got rid of their late fees. But what they did is they put it into their existing business unit, which required gross margins of over 60%. A Netflix model of business only requires gross margins of 30% to be profitable. So their cost structure is really high for Blockbuster because they got all those buildings and employees and, capital that they have to pay, where Netflix doesn't have any of that. But they incorporate in their existing business, and that's what caused them to fail. They were producing still, even with Netflix as a threat, millions in profit, up to the point that they incorporated a Netflix type of model where you could do streaming, no late fees, we do DVDs, shipped right to your house, shipped back, and that caused them to burn through all their cash and fail. That's what happened. But I fully believe, as I've studied this, that if Blockbuster would have created a new business unit that operated independently with its own culture and process and not attached to their own unit, and it was like the Netflix model, they would have Netflix because of larger resources and brand. And Netflix, and we would all be streaming our video services through Blockbuster. They created the same streaming services at a lower price than Netflix did when they were competing, but they failed simply because they integrated it into their existing business when it should have been separated as an independent business owned by them. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's where I see they got to create a new business unit for Paladina, just like they did for RX.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a great perspective, Dalen. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I really like the separation there, and I think they definitely thought it was necessary as well. I'm just going back through the case study here, trying to read Thury's thoughts, while he's creating this different model. It says to significantly improve member health and lower total healthcare costs over time. It seems like they had some different goals as well between the two different business models here between Paladina and RX. Definitely similarities, putting the customer first, focusing on them, giving them more of a better experience, and things like that. What did you guys notice were large differences between Paladina and RX?
The sheer size and the lack of experience.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Yep. Those are probably the main ones. What about as far as the business model? Were there any different goals that Paladina had that RX didn't really have that you guys noticed? I'm asking as well.
Well, I think that the one thing that kind of stood out to me is that, when you're dealing with insurance, when you're dealing with, reimbursements for doctor visits, things like that, you have such, you're working on a real, you have a criteria of like, time and what happened on the visit and this and that. So I think that sometimes it's really easy to get so caught up with the parameters of, you have to stick within a certain thing that you lose sight of okay, why are we doing this? We are doing this because we want to provide a better primary care experience for people. We want to have them come to us rather than go to the instant care or the emergency room or things like that. We're trying to change people's paradigm about all of this. But I think that then you have the billing aspect of it and the regulation of the insurance industry, and you have certain guidelines that I think that sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the process versus the reason why you're doing the process, and then you can get caught up in all of that other stuff and you can lose the sight of customer service. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think that's going on. That's a big struggle that they're having. Plus they're having a big struggle with trying to actually get people on board with what they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, wrapping up this case study, the last question says, what golem take the job? So I think it means, assuming that Golem is taking the job as, what is he going to be, the CEO, I think, of this new company, Paladina. I think that's right. The new leader, at least. What are his next steps? What is he going to do? Which hypotheses does he need to test? Separate processes and systems? What's kind of our stance on what are basically Golem's next steps taking over Paladina? I think Paladina should target a smaller number of employers at first, get a little bit more experience under their belt, get some more cash reserves, things like that. Mainly those differences that were lack of experiences and lack of resources, comparatively to RX. I think that's what Paladina needs to seek to obtain next before they start expanding. And I think Golem has the experience and the know-how to set that firm foundation for Paladina and really start them off right. what do you guys think? What is your take on Golem taking the job, his next steps, and what he should do?
I agreed with you. I think that he should focus on the smaller number of employers, and just really work out the operational issues, and providing great service, but also, you know, really focusing on their value proposition, and creating that service, because I think that's, you know, companies that are really known for service. I mean, they didn't start off the biggest and the fastest. Like, they really built that strong foundation, and then then their reputation. Because if you've got a good reputation and people know about your company, then not only are you gonna, you know, you're gonna gain more customers, but a lot of those customers are gonna come from your current customers referring them to you. So I think it's all just focus on building the strong foundation, the operational issues, providing good service, and then the growth will come.
And I think, to reiterate too, you know, I think, Dalen, that analogy of Blockbuster was perfect, because it's definitely the same thing here. They're trying to open up a smaller wing, you know, under DaVita, you know, but with it being Paladina, something different, a different type of service. It needs to start off small scale. It needs to start off as a startup. And right now they're kind of in a routine. They're kind of rote in the way of being a large corporation, something that's massive. I mean, a Fortune 500, you know, and it talked about, I can't find the exact wording, I was looking for it, but, you know, like they're trying to treat it like a Fortune 500 company already, and maybe it will be one day, but that branch of DaVita needs to start off small, start off in the beginning, just like DaVita did back in the day. Start off small and then grow into, you know, what DaVita has become. DaVita has become successful. You know, RX, if it's not successful yet, it is right on the cusp of it. So, you know, they're getting there. They have the right idea, and just like everybody else is talking about, you know, the clientele in that, and having a good culture, you know, it's there, it's developing, but they need to make sure that they implement it, as well as help Paladina grow from a startup and not as something that's always existed.
Yeah, great insights.
Okay, awesome. Well, I feel pretty good about that, Kate. We can kind of wrap that one up and move on to the next one.
You guys did a good job on that question, and that question's on our paper.
Oh, nice.
Assuming Golub takes the job. Oh, I guess it's a little different. What should he do? It's a question. What hypotheses need to be tested?
Sign as a group. Oh.
I don't like this case. I wanted to talk about the other one. This one's boring.
No, I feel like you guys did a good job though on that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. I just think it's funny because I sometimes there are certain things like where we're reading and we're like I have this another class that's just, yeah, pushing me to my very limit, and I just want to throw my computer out the wall sometimes. Anyway, let's go on.
Yeah. I don't mean to complain, but...
All right. Yeah, and I put some. Answer number 2. Okay. Yeah. Good. Let's move on to the next one then. Intuit Incorporated project case. So this one is about the project AgriNova in India, talking about the farmers and their SMS service for disseminating price and agent contact information to farmers and things like that. So, discuss as a group what it's like to be a farmer in India. So, none of us have been farmers in India before, most likely. So, why are the conditions so terrible? How does AgriNova propose to improve life for farmers? And why don't we just start with that? So, what do you guys think? Why is it so bad right now in being a farmer in India? Sally, why don't you take this one over? You seem to like this case a little bit more.
It's cool. Well, what I think it's mostly just because I don't remember the exact number, but like at the beginning of the case, it said that I think it was 25% of the GDP of India was related to agriculture. But anyways, agriculture is like a big part. Oh yeah. So yeah, 60% to 70% accounts to equipment relating agriculture, and like I'm assuming that's how like most people like survive, and they don't really like if they live in like small villages like in the middle of nowhere, like they probably like that's what they do, and they were not really educated, so like they're kind of stuck in that same cycle of doing agriculture and to get at least enough money to feed themselves and their families. So I don't think they really have like a lot of options because of that. And as a result of the case, like I realized a lot of these farmers were not really well educated, and they kind of just went along with whatever like people would give them, and the people that helped them sell their stuff too would take like commissions off of that. And oftentimes they took advantage of them, but they didn't really complain about it too much because sometimes like what they had to sell like could go bad to. I guess it's just like they don't really have like much of an option.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I got from it, but I don't know. Like I just know like like the government doesn't really take care of their citizens oftentimes, and it's really corrupted. So there's like a lot of other factors that have to do with it as well, in my opinion. Next.
I can touch some more on that if you'd like.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Sally already hit a lot of these. Conditions are bad because they didn't know what other farmers were farming, and so you never knew like, oh, if he's gonna sell potatoes, should I be selling potatoes? They want to know what not to farm because of what they're the other farmers are farming, and then prices because of economic reasons is fluctuating by the hour. I mean, it can go up to between 50% change within a day, within a few days, 100% change for selling your stuff. And not only that, but you got this middleman between the wholesaler and you got this middleman that you're working with, and they're scoundrels. They're liars, and they'll all charge you different stuff. Now, some of the smart farmers, there's like one, he'll send out 3 guys with little breads or maybe little potatoes, and he'll see what prices they offer, and he'll go with the highest guy and sell the bulk of his stuff to that guy. But the majority of the people, like Sally said, they don't have a ton of education, so they have a feeling that they're being scammed, but they're like, well, I'm going to get scammed no matter what, so it's all right. And they have some liability sometimes because these middlemans would offer them loans. And then so when they would like try to switch a middleman, that guy would be like, hey, you owe me money, Joe, so you better come to me. And so it kind of tied him up. And so the way that Agrinova proposes to improve it is if either one, they can cut out the middleman altogether, which they kind of decide not to do that. I still think that's a good idea. You cut out the middleman altogether and you get them in contact with wholesalers with more price accuracy and send out through text messages what all the prices being offered are. And that's kind of how they want to mitigate that. They also want to be able to kind of forecast how much you'd be able to sell it for based off of how many people are selling that type of crop or making it and what they're planning to make. At first, they were like, well, if we just tell them like 500 farmers are making potatoes, then they're like, well, is that like too many or not enough? Or I don't know. So they need some kind of system that they could forecast. There's 500 farmers making potatoes. That's not enough. And if you make potatoes, you'll be able to sell them for $1 a pound. And I'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds good. I'm going to take that route.
Yeah, I compare their situation to gas stations. Gas stations right now, what they do is they try to pay attention a little bit onto how much a barrel is for fuel, but when it comes down to it, they look at their local economy too. They look at their local stores. So like some stores that are right along the interstate, they're going to get higher priority because people want to jump off the interstate, fill up, and get back on and keep moving on their travels. So that's why next to the interstate, they're higher premium. And then you have ones that are more back in neighborhoods where it's more of a convenience store, but they still sell, you know, fuel, but it's a lot less. And so wherever these, you know, wherever each of these little economic situations are, they watch each other. They watch the competition too and say, you know what, they're selling the same thing I am, but they're selling it for this price. So I got to knock mine down by maybe 2 cents per gallon. And, you know, that way people are more attracted to come to where I'm at, even though a car who has, you know, 10 gallons of gas to put in it, I mean, you're saving 20 cents, but you know, to somebody else, to just, you know, the regular person, they're going to think, oh, I'm saving more money by going to this one location. So to me, I think that's something that would also help them is them networking with each other or watching each other, you know, with the whole phone system, like Dalen was saying too, just a way to be able to communicate better, to be more in the know of what their neighbor is doing and the guy down the street too.
All points. Thanks for sharing. And I think Agrinova's goal is to kind of bridge that gap a little bit, like you were talking about, Kelly, is really help them be able to find what's the best fit for them, for the agents, and for the economy that they're in. Because it does sound like they only know what's going on in their little village for those farmers. And so Agrinova is trying to help fill that need because it's definitely a problem. How does it actually work? I think they're still figuring it out from what I understood about that. They're still kind of trying to get the hang on what they should develop next. They don't really have a way to monetize it from what I've seen. Let me see. And they really are kind of looking for their next steps here. And figuring out if people are actually going to use it. It seems a pretty advanced for the type of people that they're working with. A lot of them are illiterate as well, which makes it all the more difficult. And I think they are really trying to help here, but it's definitely a struggle for sure. What do you guys think? Do you think it's a good idea what they're doing, and how would you describe the business model?
I think it's a good idea. I feel like they have like good intentions behind it, but I think it's gonna be like more complicated than that, just because a lot of the farmers don't even have a cell phone. I think when they did interviews, I don't remember how long they did them for, like 2 weeks or something. I think they only encountered one of them that had a cell phone. So I was just like wondering how they were actually planning to reach out to those other farmers that didn't have like a cell phone. So, and then another thing too was just like working things out with agents because they worked on commission. So like they never really told like the farmers like the fair market price. Everything off, so it's like it wouldn't really like an incentive to like I don't know, like I guess they would need like an incentive for the long term for agents to work with them, because otherwise like they would be losing money. You know what I mean? So from that perspective, I don't know, like no, I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know, it's just thoughts. I think that was a good idea. I'm not sure if it'll work out. Go ahead, Kelly. I'm done.
I just don't know how practical it is. I mean, you know, I try to think of a business model canvas, and I'm just not quite really seeing the customer segment to begin with. And I think a lot of it has to comes down to that lack of education, lack of technology use. You know, they recognize names of places or they recognize other words or whatever because of the shape. They identify it by shape, not because they know how to actually pronounce what they're actually looking at and understand that it's a word. That's not how they recognize it. And I think that that's something that is going to have, to really struggle, they understand numbers so they can dial, but, to advance it past that would be a very difficult thing. It would be more than just providing, a cell phone service. It would also be providing some kind of educational courses to be able to show them how to use the phone properly, to its fullest capabilities. So I don't know how practical it is, but I like the idea. It's meant to improve life, but it just depends on how far they're willing to be able to put into the effort to help these farmers get more caught up to the 21st century.
Yep.
Going on question 2, what did you like about how they pursue this opportunity? What would you do differently? How have they found product market fit? Why? I think that I liked how they went about finding the opportunity. I think they did well finding an unmet need, doing their market research, evaluating if this was actually a worthwhile venture. They had a lot of interviews up front. They were asking a lot of questions. And so I did like how they pursued the opportunity. As far as what I would have them do differently, I think, what did I say here? I think they should have gotten a product out there a little bit sooner. I know they don't really have one ready, and I kind of go back and forth on this. But now they have some competitors with better resources and honestly better market knowledge on this subject matter. And so if they would have had a product out there sooner, then they could have kind of claimed that and had a one-up on the competition. Where now I don't know what makes Agrinova unique. I don't know what they're going to capitalize in their business model. And so, I do think they should ask more questions to agents and figure out what the agents want out of this kind of product. Because right now, the agents kind of have they got it good. They're not really worrying about too much. They're being sneaky and shady and making money, and they're okay with that. And so asking them more questions on what they're looking for would help them maybe find something unique that they can capitalize on. But I don't think this is a very, not that it's not a good idea, but I don't think it's really a worthwhile venture for them. It's the business model is relying on too many other people. They're mainly relying on these agents who are already pretty shady people. And so relying on them to commit to help them out, knowing that they're going to receive a pay cut, I don't think it's really going to lead them to success.
Yeah, and I mean, India's economy is not exactly thriving either, so taking a pay cut definitely would not be acceptable to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Do you think Inuit will be able to build a large-scale, profitable business out of this opportunity? Let's take a vote on that. I don't think they will be able to.
Yeah, I don't see it either.
I don't
No.
either.
Okay. Well, we're all in agreement there. So one of the questions, kind of wrapping up then, is we got to identify the risks that the venture faces. Which assumption should the team test? So I think, we should write a hypothesis. I don't really know where to go with this one. Do you guys have any ideas?
I think this is just for it's not for this one. Is it? Yeah, just kidding.
No, it's for this one.
Oh yeah, you're right. Sorry, I was. Yeah. Never mind.
Well, I think that, gosh. Where do you begin with the risks? So I think one of the things that would have kind of an idea that I had is like a way that the only way they could really expect this to take off would be they'd have to have a way of organizing a system to get all the farmers on board and using the system. So it would take a real grassroots effort. They'd have to have several people on the ground establishing networks and getting everyone on the same page. It'd almost be like, for lack of a better word, like a union, so to speak, to get everybody. And they'd have to, and the best way to really test it, they'd have to start in several different villages across the different states. They couldn't just like do one isolated area. And they'd have to make sure that, we've already talked about this with the agents, making sure that the agents are honest. And the way to do that would be offering them some kind of an incentive for being honest, because the reason that they're not being honest is because they've got financial gain on the line, and so giving them some kind of an incentive to be honest, so that they're disseminating correct information. But I don't know how you would go about that, but you'd have to incentivize them somehow. And when you're working with corrupt people, that could be an incentive you're not willing to, sort of a bribe or something, and you want to keep it on the honest and integrity.
I'm just writing down what you're saying. That's a great point there.
And I'm assuming it would be like obviously money, like monetary, because what else like really motivates you to like do something, like if we're being real. Like,
yeah,
I guess like leadership as well, obviously, kind of like if you could set an example and be a leader and actually like enforce the rules, that would also kind of like set the tone of what it's expected.
okay. So the hypothesis I wrote from that is there an incentive that Intuit can offer to encourage the agents to be honest about fair market value for the farmers' crops?
Okay.
What would be the pass-fail criteria? So, like, I don't know.
I guess you'd have to have almost like an independent third party watching the prices, like watching actual prices versus what the agents are saying, to kind of double check to make sure to like track it, to say, okay, this is what actually the prices were. This is what they said they were, to see how on track they were with the prices, if they really were being honest.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's just kind of what's coming to my mind.
Yeah, I think just enough farmers willing to participate as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So we kind of have a specific action MVP to test your hypothesis. So,
well, the minimum viable product would be the text messages, or the way of, because I believe, it seems like in the case today, it seemed like a lot of the farmers had like mobile phones or knew how to use mobile phones.
mm-hmm.
And a lot of them knew how to, figure out break even. Like they knew basic math and they could figure things out. So I don't know. Like a minimum viable product would be, I don't know.
Minimum viable product. Huh.
What do the rest of you guys think?
I don't even know.
It's just kind of like
I don't-
hard to test. Like, how do you test like their honesty and like figure out if they're giving you like their fair value market? But
Okay. Well, we can come back to that one later after we think about it for a little bit. The expected results then. If we're looking at this from Agrinova's point of view, what are the results that we expect from?
Well,
I guess that the farmers get, just fair treatment. That the farmers get fair revenue. That there's some kind of median price out there for whatever goods they're selling. You know, potatoes could be, I don't know, however many dollars per pound or whatever, but then carrots can be something else, or whatever product they have, whatever price units they use. I think the idea is just to at least make some kind of consistent price across the board. That way there's some kind of standard, some kind of guidance when it comes to the pricing out there, instead of just 1 hour now, and it's $5 for 10 pounds, and then 2 minutes later it changes, it's only it's 6, or it's only 4, or maybe it drops or fluctuates even greater than that. But just something to where it provides some kind of consistency, so that the sellers can also go in with some kind of confidence, selling their product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. Well, good. Yeah, I think we got some good things. Why is Inuit doing this? I think they really are trying to help here. They found an unmet need, maybe see kind of a situation that's not really fair, and they want to help out and make some money at the same time. Okay. Well, do you guys have anything else that you think should be brought up in this meeting, or do we feel pretty good?
Looks like we just need to, on the DeVita case, we've already got some good thoughts in there, but we just have that second question about which hypotheses need to be tested. What should he do to test them? What results would you accept as good enough? We need to work on that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to have to go in a second because I've got another group that I got to get on with for another class.
Oh, man.
Second. So I don't know if we can be done in the next few minutes here.
Well, why don't we just think about it and see if we can all kind of write something.
Okay.
For Saturday.
Okay. And then you're going to submit it on Saturday?
Yeah, I can submit this, or somebody else can. Doesn't matter.
If you want to do it, that'd be I would appreciate that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Right,
And then is it my turn? Is it my turn to lead the hangout next week?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So as far as ending this hangout, you press stop broadcast, and then it'll give you a link, and you've just submitted that link to the teacher.
Yeah, it'll go into your YouTube account under your video manager.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you go in, click on it like you're going to watch the video, and then that link that it shows up at the top, copy and paste that, and that's what you'll do.
Awesome.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks, guys.
Hey, thanks, guys.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
Have you, this is kind of random, but has the teacher graded you guys' like prep analysis?
Oh, I actually emailed him. I emailed him 2 days ago because there's several weeks of them that have not been graded. And I said, is there a reason why these haven't been graded? He said that he just found out that the TA had been sick and was supposed to get them graded in the next week. And he said if they weren't graded in the next week to let him know. But I did email him about that on Monday.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yep.
Yeah, I was kind of great.
Yeah, so if I don't see something graded by Monday or Tuesday of next week, I'll email him again.
Alright, cool. Well, I'll see you guys next week, and I'm adding some stuff to like the last question.
Awesome. I'll turn that in on Saturday. I mean, if it's done sooner than that, I'll probably do it earlier Saturday.
Okay.
Alright,
So how much more needs to be put into the body of this? Do we just need to finish answering the last one as a group, and that's it?
Yep, it
Yeah.
looks like it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make sure I try to get my 2 cents in tonight. That way it can just be done.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Cool. Hey, thanks, guys.
All right, have a good
Have a
one.
good weekend.